Phyrexia All Will Be One is about to start off the next huge story in Magic the Gathering, possibly even bigger than the War of the Spark against Nicol Bolas. The fight against Elesh Norn promises to be a costly battle for some of our favorite planeswalkers. Before we set foot back on New Phyrexia, let's recap how we got to this critical point in the MTG story. This is everything you need to know before Phyrexia All Will Be One. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Ether Hub. I'm Simon, bringing you more Magic the Gathering lore. Phyrexia All Will Be One is just around the corner, but with its long-standing, twisting story that reaches back several sets, a lot of players don't know where the Phyrexian plot really starts, and what's important to know heading into this story. This video hopefully will put all of those crucial plot points bluntly in line so you don't feel lost with Phyrexia All Will Be One. Before we begin, I just want to thank you all so much for your support of our content. If you like the videos we make here at the Ether Hub, consider showing support by leaving this video a like, becoming a subscriber, and of course, sharing it with your friends. Now let's recap the Phyrexian arc in MTG so far, and how we're entering into this new era of Magic storytelling. This is everything you need to know about Phyrexia All Will Be One. The planeswalker Karn had created the plane of Mirrodin, originally calling it Argentum. It was partially made of metal mimicking organic matter. Bronze-plated flowers lined rivers of molten silver, and beyond that, thick jungles of spike-like trees. He created golems to live there, leaving one called Memnarch in charge. Karn would travel the Blind Eternities often, exploring and working alongside other planeswalkers. In his travels, he didn't realize that he had contracted Phyrexian glistening oil that would slowly take root and infect the plane. The fungal mycosynth organisms began to form from the glistening oil, and their spores spread, changing whatever organic material it contacted into metal, and changing artificial matter into something organic, biological, and alive. While Karn was away, Memnarch struggled to control the spread of the mycosynth, and the glistening oil too began to drive him mad. This Warden became obsessed with his creator, wanting to become a planeswalker and create life as he had. Memnarch renamed the plane from Argentum to Mirrodin, and began experimenting on other golems and plotting ways to gain a planeswalker spark. He would find a way to abduct inhabitants of other planes and bring them to Mirrodin. Over the years, these biological life forms began to adapt to their now more metal world. As the generations went on, Memnarch paid close attention to any beings that could potentially have a planeswalker spark, farming these life forms to make himself a planeswalker. Eventually, one of the new inhabitants of Mirrodin, an elf named Glissa Sunseeker, would be born with a latent planeswalker spark, which prompted Memnarch to try to steal it. Glissa teamed up with some of the other abducted inhabitants who had allied together, led by the Goblin Slowbad and the once human Lich, Geth. Eventually Memnarch was defeated, but Phyrexians began to appear out of the toxic swamps of the Mephrodros. It was the Phyrexians who offered Geth a new body, and he accepted, wanting to use artificial strength to gain control over the Mephrodros. Glissa, rejected by her people, went into hiding within the core of Mirrodin, and too was infected. After some time traveling the multiverse, Karn gives up his spark to mend a time rift on Dominaria, and the Phyrexian oil that had been latent within his body began to infect him. In a panicked state, Karn returns to Mirrodin, where the oil continues to corrupt him further. The Phyrexians there capture him, calling him their father of machines. More and more of the captured inhabitants of Mirrodin became Phyrexianized, and eventually factions formed for those who learned to channel different colors of mana. Leaders of these factions were called Praetors, who all had different ideas of how to progress New Phyrexia. The white-aligned Praetor, Elesh Norn, had control over the machine orthodoxy, concerned with unifying New Phyrexia under one rule, hers. Shieldred is the black-aligned Praetor, and she gained control over the Steel Thrains, which included Geth. These were titanic Phyrexians who ruled over the Mephrodros. The Thrains vied for power over the unfortunate residents of the Mirren Swamps, making them slaves, exploiting them with blackmail, and, of course, the threat of death. Jin Gitaxias is the blue-aligned Praetor, concerned with experimenting on living beings and finding perfection within the Phyrexian endeavor. Urabrask is the red-aligned Praetor, While controlling the industrial furnace layer of Mirrodin, he's often too aggressive and contrarian to work with the other Praetors, preferring freedom and independence over all else. Vorinclex is the green-aligned Praetor, who promotes predation, survival of the fittest, and wishes Mirrodin to continue in Memnarch's vision in which only the strong survive. It was Vorinclex who completed the elf Glissa Sunseeker. The Praetor had poisoned her mind and twisted her to the will of New Phyrexia. Other planeswalkers familiar with an old Phyrexia had heard of the rise of this new Phyrexia on Mirrodin and arrived to save Karn. Koth of the Hammer, Elspeth Torrell, and Venzer the Artificer met with Tezzeret, the former minion of the diabolical Nicol Bolas, who agrees to help them infiltrate New Phyrexia. While infiltrating New Phyrexia, the completed Glissa had sent Tezzeret to find a human girl named Melira, who he introduced to Elspeth, Koth, and Venzer instead. Melira was immune to glistening oil and could heal those who had been infected as long as their organic bodies were not too far gone. Once they found Karn in the throne room in the core of Mirrodin, Melira knew that he could only be saved by a sacrifice. It was the already dying Venzer who gave up his life and his spark to save Karn and all of Mirrodin. Karn vows to cleanse Mirrodin and the multiverse of the Phyrexian infection he had spread. Koth and Melira set out to find survivors to join this resistance. The planeswalker Kaya Kassir hears of a strange monster wreaking havoc on the plane of Kaldheim. She, acting more as a mercenary, is paid in strange and otherworldly currency by an unknown benefactor to check out these claims and end the monster's life. We find out later that this mysterious benefactor is in fact the planeswalker Tezzeret, who had originally aligned himself with the Phyrexians for personal benefits, is now acting as a double agent, working against his former allies to undermine their ultimate mission of completing the multiverse. On Kaldheim, there exists 10 realms connected by the World Tree, though the gods of the plane were the only beings without a spark able to travel between them. The goddess connected to the World Tree was Azika, who brewed the Cosmos Elixir from the tree's sap to gift the other gods with power and immortality. Azika was attacked and wounded by the mysterious monster that turned out to be the Praetor Vorinclex, who stole some of her Cosmos Elixir to take back to New Phyrexia. They planned to plant a tree of their own to connect all the planes of the multiverse, allowing them to travel across the blind eternities without a planeswalker spark so they could fulfill their ultimate purpose, to conquer all. However, it wasn't known how Vorinclex came to be on the plane of Kaldheim in the first place. If Vorinclex could make it from New Phyrexia to Kaldheim, what would be the purpose of this world tree? We would find out later just how painful and inefficient their previous mode of traveling the multiverse had been. Jin-Gitaxias found his way onto the plane of Kamigawa. Similarly to Kaldheim, it too had 2 realms. Kamigawa didn't have a world tree connecting the realms, and only the spirits of this plane, called Kami, could travel between the 2. Jin-Gitaxias needed to study these Kami, experiment on them, and figure out how they traveled without a spark. Tezzeret worked with the Praetor to develop the Reality Chip, a jellyfish-like artifact that had the ability to affect a planeswalker's spark. The Emperor of Kamigawa was a planeswalker with an unstable spark of her own, and had to strain in concentration just to keep herself on one plane at any moment of time. Her childhood friend, another planeswalker named Kato Suzuki, and a Moonfolk planeswalker native to Kamigawa, Tamio, think the Reality Chip can help stabilize the Emperor's spark, so they set out to find it. They managed to steal it and attach it to the Emperor, which gives her valuable information about Jin-Gitaxias' laboratories on Kamigawa. They decide to go and destroy these old facilities and find Jin-Gitaxias and Tezzeret in one where they had been experimenting on the Kami. A fight breaks out, and in that short time, the Emperor injured Jin-Gitaxias and they kidnapped Tezzeret. The Planeswalkers try to use the Reality Chip to help them get away from their minions, but Tezzeret takes control of the Reality Chip, grabs Tamio, and escapes using the planar bridge embedded within his body. Tezzeret also takes an injured Jin-Gitaxias back to New Phyrexia, who is now equipped with the knowledge of how to use the Reality Chip to complete Planeswalkers without removing their souls, this being the only true way where a Planeswalker can be completed. The completion process requires a soul to be intact. It can't just be a mindless body, an empty husk. If the completion process kills the soul, they essentially just have a Phyrexianized zombie. For these minions to serve their purpose, they must be completed planeswalkers, with the ability to spread their influence throughout the multiverse. This is why Karn was immune to his glistening oil until he gave up his spark, and why acquiring Venzers ultimately saved him. Now, Jin-Gitaxias had a new planeswalker to experiment on, Tamiyo, the very first completed planeswalker. On the plane of Capenna, the only existing city, New Capenna, is surrounded by a protective barrier. The rest of the plane is a wasteland, littered with hints that it had once been full of life. In the ancient past, Phyrexia had attacked this plane, pushing the angels and demons native to this world to create this circular barrier from a magical substance called Halo. Unlikely allies, the demons plotted against the angels with the other inhabitants, eventually leading New Capenna to exploit the angels and control the city through the halo only they could produce. The Phyrexians warred on, but with the death of Yawgmoth, Capenna was able to defeat them. Through manipulation, the demons convinced the mortal citizens of New Capenna to trap the angels so that their bodies could be used to create more halo that would protect and power the city. The planeswalker Elspeth Tirel, who grew up in a Phyrexian prison, discovers that she was born on Capenna, eventually captured in the first Phyrexian invasion there. Determined to avenge those she had lost and fight for her newfound home, Elspeth protects a young angel named Gaida, who is being held prisoner to produce halo for one of the factions of New Capenna. The city having fallen to numerous demon-led crime families who are tearing the city apart, all so that they can control the dwindling supply of halo. The angels and their halo were thought to be an important part in defeating the Phyrexians during the first invasion, and the multiverse was going to need their help in the coming war against New Phyrexia. Gaida willingly creates a halo-infused weapon for Elspeth, named Luxior, and sacrifices herself to allow angels to return to New Capenna again. The planeswalker Vivian Reed arrives on New Capenna, finding the predator Urabrask hidden there. He was injured, revealing that Tezzeret had transported him to New Capenna through the planar bridge, the same way he had done with Vorinclex on Kaldheim and Jin-Gitaxias to Kamigawa. The planar bridge had damaged the organic parts of his body, allowing only inorganic material to travel through the Blind Eternities unmaimed. Tezzeret, who he plotted with against Elesh Norn's plans to unify all Phyrexians under her rule. Though he is a praetor, he promotes free will and often works against his kind, who want to conquer not only Mirrodin, but the rest of the multiverse. Urabrask asks for Vivian to find Elspeth Tirel and bring him Halo, believing it will be key in their fight against Elesh Norn. Karn during this time had been on Dominaria, where he found the Golgothian Silex, a bowl-shaped artifact created by the Thran that was said to hold, quote, the memories of the land. He began to dig in the caves of Koilos and found a tablet that supposedly instructed him on how to use it, written in the lost language of the Thran Empire. Karn didn't know how, but Urza had used it to defeat Yawgmoth's forces during the first Phyrexian invasion. While he was there, the place where the first portal to Phyrexia had been opened years ago, Karn discovered that Sheoldred was using the cave as a staging ground for New Phyrexia's latest attack on Dominaria. With a new invasion being imminent, Karn knew he must learn how to use the Silex. While other planeswalkers in Dominaria worked together to rally allies to fight against New Phyrexia, they realized that there were many sleeper agents that had already infiltrated the societies of the plane. A Johnny Goldmane, a Leonin planeswalker known for his compassion and heroics, disappeared while chasing after a Phyrexian creature during an attack on a peace summit. New Phyrexia attacked many places at the same time in Dominaria, one of them being the Mana Rig, where the artificer Joyra worked. Karn had hidden the Silex in a closet on the Mana Rig, and when he heard it was under fire, he rushed there with another planeswalker, the pyromancer Jaya Ballard, along with the immortal archmage Joda, who teleported them there. Jaya got the Silex, planning to planeswalk away with it, but as they watched the newly completed skyship Weatherlight arrive, it dropped off more Phyrexian abominations along with their friend, Ajani. Before their very eyes, Ajani reveals himself to be completed. Now serving Sheodred, their former ally stabs Jaya through with his double-headed axe and pushes her over the edge of a cliff. Ajani crushes the Silex with the strength of his new metal body, then proceeded to crush Karn as well, immobilizing him and taking him to New Phyrexia. Upon appearing in New Phyrexia, his dismantled body landed in the possession of Elesh Norn, who had Tezzeret help reassemble him. Karn here discovers a sapling tree called the Realmbreaker. Made from the World Tree on Kaldheim, it would be used to transport troops from New Phyrexia to invade all other worlds. Members of the Gatewatch meet at Urza's tower, where the talented artificer, Saheeli Ray, worked on creating a replica of the Silex. Once she had completed it, she also created a temporal anchor for Teferi to use. This would separate his soul from his body and allow him to travel through time and figure out just how Urza used the original Silex. Phyrexia attacks the tower, and the other planeswalkers and Jodah fight their forces while Teferi finds the right timeline to watch Urza detonate the Silex on Dominaria. Teferi was able to speak with Urza during the blast and discovered that there was no secret to detonating the Silex. It came down to the person, or possibly their state of mind, that sets it off. During the Phyrexian attack, the temporal anchor was damaged, with Teferi time traveling inside of it, trapping him in another timeline. Kaya had used her powers to stay in contact with him and was able to relay the information gained from Urza to the rest of the Gatewatch. They hatched a plan with the allied citizens of Dominaria to go to New Phyrexia and detonate Saheeli's Silex and destroy Realmbreaker. This was their plan of attack. The forces of the Gatewatch, along with the forces of anyone for a free multiverse, must bring the fight to Elesh Norn. And there you guys have it, the Phyrexian story thus far as we head into All Will Be One. I have a lot of hope for this story arc. We have loads of build up here for one of the most terrifying villains in MTG history, even more so than Nicol Bolas. The rampant ideology of Phyrexia stands as a much more imposing threat to the multiverse. Nicol Bolas only wanted to rule over all. The Phyrexians want to subjugate life itself, twisting free will into serving only the Phyrexian path. To me, that's much worse. While we recapped how we got to this point, I just want to state how excited I am for the future of Magic storytelling. You guys know how I've felt about some of the more recent big story payoffs, or lack thereof. War of the Spark sucked. But with the Phyrexia arc, I again have some hope that it won't be a complete letdown. One of the story points I'm most excited for is the conflict between the planeswalkers Elspeth Tirel and Ajani. They're both really good friends, mentors, allies for so many years. They're truly one of the most well-fleshed out relationships in MTG. With Ajani's completion and defection to the Phyrexians, their inevitable confrontation will probably be a making or breaking point for me and how I feel about the All Will Be One story. In the video, you're seeing an amazing pixel animation done by Kiln's Pixel Studio. They reached out to me and asked me for my feelings on this dialogue between Elspeth and Ajani and a potential meeting between the two. And honestly, this is the direction I hope Wizards of the Coast goes in. Again, this was done by Kiln, and you can find them on Twitter at thepixelslime1, and you can also check out their YouTube channel, which I have linked in the description down below. As always, I want to know your guys' opinions in the comments. Are you excited for the story in Phyrexia All Will Be One? If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, become a subscriber, and share it with your friends. It all goes a long way in helping us build this community. As always guys, thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, see ya!